Hello and welcome to the Anatomy of Marriage podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Studley, and today I am responding to Seth's video and podcast yesterday about negative self-talk and kind of giving my perspective on the conversation that he and I had over the course of a couple days and what that was like for me and just some insights that I have around it. So I noticed that negative self-talk is sort of a thing in our world. We hear that sort of phrase thrown around kind of a lot. But what I was thinking about is I don't often hear people talk about positive self-talk, which is weird. Like, why do we have negative self-talk but not positive self-talk? I think that that's not quite fair or balanced. And I think this is a really important topic because as a kid, I didn't grow up having negative self-talk. My parents were very clear on the fact that all of my brothers and sisters mattered. We all had good and valuable thoughts and opinions. It didn't matter how old you were. You didn't have to be 17 or older to have a good idea. You could have a good idea at any age, and everyone was valuable. My father is the head of a huge organization, and they help build, homeless shelters and women's living facilities for battered women, all these things. So we grew up with the sense that everyone is valuable and matters. It doesn't matter if they're homeless or if they're, in an abusive relationship. They matter. You matter, right? Seth didn't grow up that way. Seth grew up with a lot of judgment and shame. Like it isn't okay to accept that someone is having financial troubles. There must be a reason that we could pin to them, judge them, and then they should feel shame about, right? So it's this weird cycle of I'm not actually going to accept you where you are. I'm going to find a reason why you're there and then hold you down in that position and be like, see, don't you feel bad? So he was raised in that sort of shame culture, judgment culture, and that really, and not to say that his family isn't wonderful, that the place where he's from isn't wonderful. They're really, really wonderful, but that's just the culture of his childhood. And so when we got married, he would think of me because I wasn't negative about myself. And if I messed up, I just was like, oh, well, I'll learn from that. I didn't cry and freak out about it. I didn't shame myself for having tried something that didn't work out in the end. And I don't think he understood that. It really rubbed him the wrong way, that I could be okay with messing up, that I could be okay with failing at something, that I could be okay with building something and then throwing it away the next day. It felt so weird to him, just so foreign. And so as we've been talking through these different conversations between he and I about negative self-talk and how it's impacting our marriage, the thing that keeps coming up to me and the thing that has been something important throughout our entire relationship is that Seth's negative self-talk actually has caused, just the fact that he does it causes more problems than any sort of external factor in our marriage, which sounds really weird because he is planting these seeds of negativity. A lot of times they're based out of fear, shame, guilt, and he's planting them throughout, just sort of if you looked at our marriage like a big giant garden. He's just sort of plopping them down unknowingly, he doesn't know that he's doing it. And then what ends up happening is they eventually grow, but you realize if you hadn't planted them, I wouldn't have to be pulling this weed, right? If you just had stopped yourself from and of course that's way easier said than done, but it really starts there. Had you not stuck these things into the dirt of our marriage, we wouldn't have to be weeding the garden in this particular way, because these are weeds that we don't even need to pull had we just not planted them. And that's a really hard lesson, because a lot of the time too, because I'm not negative about myself in many ways, and Seth, that's his kind of go-to thing. If I were to say, hey, we actually don't need to plant this seed in here, it would make him feel ashamed, stupid, guilty, whatever, and then he'd plant another seed right away because of that other seed he had planted. So it's this really bad cycle. And I genuinely think that the way that I was raised with with seeing the value in all people, even if they're different than you, and especially when they're different than you, that was really, really helpful for me in our marriage. It has been, to not look at Seth and judge him for what he's doing. Like, I'm not angry that he thinks that way, because he thinks that way. I can't stop that from happening, so anger isn't going to be a good option. But I can love him through it and let him know I am here. I am here when that happens, because it's going to happen. And we're going to work on it together to try to make it not happen. But if it happens again, I'm still going to be here, and that's okay, right? Like, I'm not going to put an ultimatum on it, like, oh, you do it one more time, you're out. Like, none of that stuff. And it's really important, if you have a spouse that is prone to negative self-talk, to be a safe place for them, because it's a cycle of negativity. And if you put them down for it, it will only make them sort of dig in farther. Like we talked about with family of origin issues, the more that you press against that family of origin issue, the more that family of origin issue kind of rears its head at you, because it's speaking from that place of injury or wound or whatever. And so if I were to be harsh with Seth about his negative self-talk, he would only most likely do it more. And it would be a bigger problem and be more weeds in our garden of marriage or whatever. And so there's a couple bullet points, like things that I wanted to hit on in this short video. And one was that Seth talked about, like, changing your narrative. I know that sounds super weird, but in my brain, it's a little bit like response flexibility, in the sense that the things you believe about yourself are an automatic response of how you have formulated your life story in your mind, right? So if I was told my entire life, like, oh, you should never sing, keep that for the shower, like, don't blah, blah, blah. Like, I would have this narrative that was automatic from my childhood experiences or my youth or whatever, or like a really harsh thing someone said, and it would be the first thing that popped up the second I thought about what I was singing, right? I'm just going to use that as an example. But we're really wonderfully made people and humans, and we can challenge our own thoughts. So when I have that immediate, don't sing, I can challenge it before acting on it. Before I can see it pop up and then say to myself, hey, you know what? Forget the thing that so-and-so said back when you were 17. I know that really hurt your feelings, but it's not the truth. And you can sing if you want. Even if you sing bad, you can sing if you want, right? So it's a bit like response flexibility, because it's that automatic feeling that you get. And so that could be in your life something like, oh, I just look so hideous. Right? That's an automatic response that we have sort of trained ourselves to think. So untrain it. Give it a new story. You feel that thing pop up and you say, oh, I'm so hideous, I'm so gross. Wait. No, I'm not. Let me think about 5 reasons that I'm not hideous and I'm not gross. And begin the process of always challenging your first response to something with a positive. Like, if you have an automatic negative thought, it's an ANT, actually, is what it's called, automatic negative thought. Dr. Amen came up with that term. And so if you have that automatic negative thought, heal it, squish it down, change it, rethink it with an automatic positive thought that you have to search out for yourself. And that's going to be part of the healing process of stopping these negative self-thoughts, right? Or negative self-talk, right? And you, in relationship with your spouse, can do this as well. Like, if your spouse is gonna, if you know what your spouse is gonna think about you, like I do this with Seth, and it's hard because it's a fine, delicate line to walk, but I will say something to him, and I will, like, if it's something important in an argument or sort of like a criticism, I will cover it in, like, hey, I do not think that I'm smarter than you, but this is the idea that I have right now that I think is going to get us actually to be closer together. Can we look at it this way? And please don't interpret this as me thinking I'm smarter than you, right? I actually do that. Like, I kind of gather together what I know his automatic negative thoughts are going to be and try to cushion it with, like, you're not welcome to take that automatic negative thought and guide with it, because I know that's what you want to do, but we're not going to do that. So that's one way that you can, if you have a spouse who does that, or if you do that, you can kind of give yourself a buffer of, like, be aware that you have those automatic negative thoughts, and then create what do you actually want to do? How do you actually want to talk around that? And don't be afraid to do that. It's awkward, but don't be afraid to do it. And then another thing, we got an iTunes review from a lady who said I was narcissistic and was like, oh, poor Seth, which, whatever, no big deal. But like I said, I wasn't taught to hate myself. So that can be really challenging to people. When I'm around people, they feel like I'm some sort of weird, like, alpha, I don't even know, but it does make some people uncomfortable. But I'm not afraid of being complex and loving myself in a healthy way and in a balanced way. I don't know. It's just, if I can't love myself and accept myself when I'm right and when I'm wrong, I'm not going to do a very good job of doing that for others. Seth talked about that in his video yesterday. I'm just not going to be good at it if I don't know how to do it for myself, because I'm the most complex person I know, because I hear all of my thoughts. I think all of my thoughts. I feel all of my feelings. So in a way, I'm the most complex human I know, because I'm actually experiencing all of myself. So if I can't experience all of myself, come to terms with myself, accept and love myself, I'm really going to probably suck at it, at accepting other people and coming to terms with other people and loving them, if I can't do it for myself. So, I don't know. I think that there's something to say about I can be okay with me. I can be okay with being kind of loud sometimes. I'm not trying to do it to be mean. I can be okay with even being inappropriate sometimes. Not trying to make people mad. I kind of think it's fun. So, I don't know. I want to challenge and kind of push back on that idea that I'm narcissistic or whatever, because I think there's such a fine line. I think there's this weird shaming, especially for women. They're not supposed to be bold and loud and fun and whatever. We're supposed to be meek and afraid and look to other people, but I'm not going to do that. Does that make me narcissistic? And I can argue excitedly with Seth and still love him. I can be complex in that way, and I can still appreciate his side of an argument and respect it. So I don't know. I want to just think about that more. I think it's worth thinking about more. And I do want to say too, if you have negative self-talk, I want you to challenge your thoughts. Like I talked about that automatic thing, but like look at it like a bull a bullfighter, like a matador with those, like a cape, right? Like you see that challenging negative thought and it's like a bull. And it's coming for you, right? It wants to rip off your freaking head. But you need to stand there with your cape and think about, okay, what way is it going to zig? And I need to zag, because it is coming after you. And the only way that you can get that bull to not annihilate you and your relationships and your marriage is by fighting back, by having a strategic setup plan of like, okay, when I get in an argument with my wife or when I see myself in the mirror, I'm going to think X, Y, and Z. So I need to do A, B, and C, right? Like I'm going to have an equal and opposite plan of attack for when this thing happens, because it's gonna happen. So yeah, I don't know. That was just a thought that came to my mind. And then another thing too is positive and negative are choices. I know that sounds weird and it sounds like they're not, because they're like feelings a little bit, but we deal with this all the time with one of our kids, and I used to do this all the time, where all I would do was complain about everything. All I would do was talk about how stupid everything was, how bad everything is, blah, blah, blah. And I was super, 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 super negative. So negative, in fact, that I couldn't even see that I was negative. And Seth would tell me all the time, like, you are so negative. But I wasn't negative about myself. I was negative about everything else. And it made him insane, and he hated it. The only reason that I caught on that I was negative is that I gave birth to 3 children who are identical to me, and they all complained from the time that they could start speaking. They were mimicking me. And it was like the most heartbreaking moment ever, 3 times in a row. And I was like, how have I been such a terribly negative mother and taught all my children to like complain and moan about everything? So I realized in that positive and negative are a choice. They are choices that we make. How we speak about things, positively or negatively, is a choice that we make. What we think about how hard our job is, or how good our job is, right? How hard our marriage is, or how easy our marriage is. Like we have the ability to frame our lives in the frame that we choose. So think if you're going to like IKEA or a framing store and you're buying a picture frame, right? Here, okay, there we go. We frame our world with how we view our world. A lot of that is taught to us, but that doesn't mean we can't reparent and relearn and rethink what our frame is, right? So if we see everything as being negative, then that's how we're gonna talk, think, feel, whatever. If we could reframe it in positivity, it changes your life, and I want you guys to do it because it's so amazing. But it's really, really, really hard. It's taken me years to even make the slightest amount of progress, but I'm excited about the progress that I'm making because I think it's really genuine, and I think it's really helpful for people to see, because I used to be ridiculous is what I used to be. So I don't know, positive and negative are choices. They really are choices. And it's hard, it's a hard choice because it feels like it's not a choice, but it is a choice. So when you catch yourself being negative, I want you to retrain yourself to flip it to the positive, right? So if I'm gonna say, oh my gosh, the plane, like they're loading the plane so slow and now I'm gonna be like, I have to sit in the plane for blah, blah, blah. Let's reframe that. You got enough money to sit on an airplane. You can read your book longer. You can do some homework. You can, I mean, what? Come on. Look at the good that's there, right? And focus on the good. What you focus on expands. When we focus on only the negative, everything becomes negative. When we focus on the positive, everything becomes positive. We can have a more balanced outlook on everything. And then, on top of that, because you feel doesn't mean it's true. Like Seth talked about, Seth feels a lot of negative thoughts. That doesn't make them true. When I look in the mirror sometimes, I feel ugly as crap. That doesn't make it true. When I look at my children sometimes, I feel like I'm not a good mom. That doesn't make that true. When I look at my home, I feel like, oh, it could be so much nicer. It's perfectly nice. Why, right? So because I feel it doesn't mean it's true. Think of like if you're on, like if you've had surgery and you're coming out of being, like the things when people get their wisdom teeth pulled and the videos of them like saying a bunch of weird crap, they feel those things. Does it make them true? Like, does it make them true? No, but they feel them, and we feel things too that are equally as weird sometimes, and it doesn't make them true. So challenge your feelings. Challenge your feelings in a healthy way, okay? And then the last thing I want to say is, what would it look like if you have negative self-talk? What would it look like to change that to positive self-talk for you? Like, for real, what would it look like? What would you need to do? I would highly recommend, and this is going to sound weird, take your video phone thing out, turn it and face yourself, and speak to yourself. You're going to feel really weird about this, but speak to yourself in positive ways. Like, do positive affirmations, and if you don't know what positive affirmations are, it's like telling yourself the way that you want to be and live and behave and think and feel in a way that encourages you to do those things. So I'm going to just do some positive affirmations, and I've done positive affirmations a billion times, but so here's some like examples. So I am smart. So I struggled with feeling stupid for years because I was a girl, because my dad didn't teach me how to fix cars and I wanted to fix cars. All these things, I just felt stupid. Like I didn't know the words or the math or the science or the history. I just felt dumb. And at some point I decided I'm done feeling dumb. I'm not dumb. I can do things that just doesn't look like how my brothers did things. So a positive affirmation for me, I am smart. My smartness looks a certain way, and it presents itself in all these different ways, and it's beautiful and amazing. I am smart. I can also have positive affirmations of, I will do good work today. I will speak kindly to Seth today. I will love my children well today. I will not let myself be sucked down by negative thoughts. I will not hide from the truth of my relationship. I'm going to face it in a good and healthy way, right? So what would it look like if you could love yourself well in positive thoughts instead of negative self-talk. Give yourself positive self-talk, positive affirmations. Lift yourself up. Videotape yourself talking to yourself in a way that feels good and genuine and authentic. And how would that resonate out and radiate out into your relationships in a new way? Like, it's going to be amazing, right? It's going to be amazing. And I'm so excited for Seth on this journey because it is already amazing. I can see his growth and his excitement and his acceptance, which feels scary to him. But the more that he accepts and the more that he grows, the more loving he becomes. That's the coolest part. And there's just nothing bad there. There's nothing to lose by being positive. Absolutely nothing is lost in positivity. I think I used to think that if I was positive, I was lying, or I was like only doing a half truth. Like, well, I'm a realist. I just look at what's really going to happen. I'm not going to get my hopes up, blah, blah, blah. Like, no. Having a positive frame in which you view the whole world lifts everything up. It lifts the hardships up. It lifts the, financial burdens up. Everything rises when we have positivity kind of at the core. And it starts with positive self-talk. It starts with sort of a journey of knowing and understanding yourself well and walking into that sort of space of truth well. So if you're dealing with negative self-talk, what would it look like to speak to yourself positively and record yourself doing it, or write it down, put it on sticky notes, hang it on your fridge, hang it on your mirror, put it everywhere. Remind yourself of how amazing you are. Remind yourself of how amazing your partner is or your children are. Pick up the pieces of positivity and bring them to yourself. It is all good. It is all good. All right, that's enough out of me. But I love you guys. If you appreciate this video, leave some comments below. Tell us how these videos are helping you. And sorry it's so long. I didn't mean for it to be 22 minutes long. But anyway, love you. Bye.